You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
WashRoom is unique.
The opportunity for students is amazing.
I wanted to be around that level of excellence.
I have a passion for service.
Learn more and apply at wasm.education. That's WAUSM.education.
Hi everybody and welcome back to Who Did What Now, the history podcast that's not your history class, with me your host, Katie Charlwood, history harlot and reader of books. So, there is less of chatty going on today because we are running straight into part 2 of Lizzie Borden, the axe murderer. Murderess? Murderer? Murderess. Both are fine. Both are acceptable. This is part 2 in a series. I know I usually don't do two-parters, but there was just so much information, we had no choice but to add more. So, if you haven't already listened to part 1, go back, listen to that, and then come back here, because I am going to skip the jibber jabber and just fact you. So, we recap, probably best. Lizzie and her sister Emma are in their 30s. They're still living at home with their father. They have gone way past spinster and are now into level Thornback, which, let's face it, much cooler name. There have been disagreements over the years in the Borden household, mainly due to the fact that Andrew Jackson Borden, their father, is hella rich, but still doesn't have, plumbing or heating in the house, which seems like kind of a necessity, one could argue. And of course there's the fact that instead of ensuring that they had better lives, what he did was buy his sister-in-law a house, which kind of irked the girls a wee bit. When all the girls wanted to do was move away from the industrial sort of area that they were in and live a luxurious life up on the hill. Also, in addition, furthermore, Andrew's second wife, who he'd been married to for 30 odd years, Abby, who just so happens to be the only person in the household who calls their maid by her actual name, because apparently she's the only one who bothered to learn it. In this little mixed family, there were problems bubbling and they rose to the surface, big disagreements were had, and the girls had to go on a wee break for reasons that we don't actually have. They go away, Lizzie comes back, and the family start getting sick. Their maternal uncle, biological maternal uncle John, he comes to visit, doing some businessy stuff with Andrew, and then the whole household mysteriously starts getting sick. And this is where we left off. The next day, Andrew, the uncle, Abby, and Bridget, the maid, all eat mutton for breakfast. Why? Oh, we think we're being poisoned and we've all been sick after eating this. Let's have more. On a scale of 0 to invading Russia in the winter, I feel like eating day-old unrefrigerated meat on one of the warmest days of the year, considering that you believe you are being poisoned, probably is like a midway point. So after breakfast, Andrew and John, they retire to the sitting room and they're getting ready for the day. Abby starts doing all the daily chores, and Bridget goes into the garden to puke, because there's nowhere else to go. There's not a kitchen sink. Where are you going to chuck up? You know what I mean? So John Morse leaves. Lizzie gets up and has a light breakfast of cookies and tea. I would call them biscuits, but in America they're cookies, so she has this really light breakfast. Because, she doesn't want to eat day-old mutton for breakfast. So while Lizzie's having her breakfast, Andrew heads off to start his day. He's going to do business stuff, but he's also going to post some mail, including letters that Lizzie gave him for him to post for her. He's on his way anyway, may as well. After Andrew leaves, Abby asks Bridget to go clean some windows. Bridget, who is, quite literally throwing up in their garden, is okay. It's incredibly hot, and I've just spent half the morning chucking up into the petunias. But fine, of course I'll clean the windows. Absolutely. So, Bridget is outside washing windows, and Lizzie, she's apparently ironing napkins, because that's a thing people do. And Abby goes up to clean the guest bedroom, which is where Uncle John Morris, is staying. Now, cleaning the guest room, that was usually like Lizzie and Emma's job. But one, Emma's not fucking there. And Lizzie, maybe she thought Lizzie was too sick to do it. Whom's to say? But she's up there. And as Abby is cleaning that guest room, she gets axed. She takes a hatchet to the neck and head 19 times. She gets a proper whack. So Abby is facing her killer at the time of the attack. The manner in which she's hit, like, it's quite possible she was on her knees. She gets whacked right on the side of the head with a hatchet, getting her like just above the ear. And as she falls, the killer just keeps like whacking her, getting her in the head and neck. So Andrew, he comes back from his morning walk between like 10:30, 11. He goes to put his key in the front door, but the door's locked, isn't it? Because ever since the burglary, they've been keeping the doors locked. So he shouts for Maggie, Bridget Sullivan. So she goes in and she unlocks the door, and as she's doing that, she swears, she curses, and whatever shit she said, it made Lizzie laugh. And Maggie, Bridget Sullivan, the maid, and Sullivan, she testified that like Lizzie was at the top of the stairs when she'd had this like muffled laugh. So yeah, Andrew Jackson Borden, he is back from his morning walk, and he decides he's going to take a wee nap on the couch. It's been a busy day. He's not feeling well. He's going to have a wee lounge on the lawn. Lizzie says that at this point she goes out to the barn to look for fishing weights, even though she hasn't gone fishing in like several years. But yeah, now is the day she decides she needs fishing weights. So off she pops, and while she goes out, Bridget Sullivan, the maid, she heads up to bed. She's going to go in her like top floor attic servants' quarters place, because she's like, fuck this for a game of soldiers. I'm going to have a lie down. Because it's hot, she feels like shit, and she just wants to sleep it off. Plus, you know, Andrew Borden is napping, she can nap too. Why not? Live your best life. So off she goes. And so while Andrew is having his nap, having a wee nap on the couch, plus he's in his 60s, you know, old people sleep more. They just do. Like cats. And while he's trying to catch his 40 winks, he gets an axe to the face, attacked with a hatchet, and he's struck like 10 or 11 times in total. His face is fucking annihilated. There's a lot of rage. Whoever did this wasn't holding back, but by waiting for him to be like dozing, this was definitely the work of someone who did not want him fighting back and also wanted to pulverize his whole fucking face into nothingness. So just after 11, Bridget, she's upstairs having a nap. Lizzie shouts for her. She's shouting for Maggie. She's like, come quick, father's dead. Somebody came in and killed him. And the maid's like, okay, fuck, that's not good. So first things first, she sends her across the street to Dr. Bowen, you know, the family doctor. But he's not there. Because he's not there, Lizzie tells her to go get a friend from down the street. Which is kind of weird to me, because like, which is, you know, you could understand someone being panicked, but there's a fucking doctor that lives next door to her. Like, there's an Irish immigrant doctor next door. And there was a French-Canadian doctor just like round the back as well. So there were other doctors really fucking close. And she's like, nope, keep going to this other person. Like, ignore these guys. Eventually, they do manage to get, like, Dr. Bowen. And somehow someone does manage to actually inform the police this happened. And so, the first thing they do is send one officer. Listen, I understand not having, like, a fully fledged, like, police force that's used to dealing with murders and shit. Like, they're probably dealing with, like, town drunks and missing cats and burglaries and the like. You know, smaller crimes. But they send one guy. And at this point, and he's, like, trying to talk to Lizzie. But Lizzie is on drugs. Her doctor has doped her the fuck up. Like, she is on morphine. So much morphine. So Dr. Bowen, in his infinite wisdom, he decided that, you know, he needed to calm Lizzie's nerves. And instead of using, like, a sedative. He's like, morphine is definitely the way to do it. Morphine. So Lizzie is on morphine and she's being interviewed by Deputy Marshal Fleet. And he's like, right, okay, here's your dad. There's the maid. There's you. Your sister's away. Where's Mrs. Borden? Like, where's your mother? And Lizzie's response, I swear to God, not exactly an inconspicuous one, was, she's not my mother. She's my stepmother. Like she corrects him, like, straight away. But she tells him, oh, well, she's not here. She got a note from a sick friend, so she had to go visit her. She's not here. Don't worry about it. But then her story changes and she's like, oh, wait, no. She came back, so she should be here. So then he's like, maybe we should go look for her? And so they start spreading out and they go looking for, Mrs. Borden. And as Bridget is going up the stairs, once she gets to a certain stair, she screams because she sees the body of Abby Borden. The way that this works, so like they actually tested this out with like a bunch of detectives and stuff at one point. There was like one step on like the whole staircase that you could see a body lying on the guest room floor. And like granted they did do it with somebody who was like a few inches to a foot taller than Abby, but that's neither here nor there. So like from this one particular spot, you could see like the body. But like only from this one step, depending on your height. From Bridget's height, you could see it from this one step. Like from another like taller person, it would have been the step below. Like that sort of way. Just because of the way this weird layout worked, because all the rooms kind of interconnected. So like a telegram gets sent out to, notify Emma of what's going on. So they find the bodies and they're like, okay, what are we going to do? They decide to get the doctors to perform postmortems on the dining room table. And they do this autopsy and they determine that because Abby's blood is more like coagulated than Andrew's. Now, if you listened to the Elizabeth Bathory episode, you would know that blood coagulates pretty quickly. Like, so it would be more stickier and gloopier and harder than, say, Andrew's. Especially when, like, the day is so hot. So that's one of the reasons why they were able to determine that Abby was definitely killed before Andrew. Because of coagulation. Science. So I was looking at the crime scene photos, which is something no reasonable sane person should do. Like, it's not good for you to do that. Like, don't do that. What I found pretty interesting is, like, you'd think that being axed in the head, like multiple trauma wounds, would be very bloody. There's not a lot of blood at the scene of the crime. Like, there's a bit, obviously, but there's not a lot of spatter. So anyway, a telegram is sent out for Emma, and she comes back. Oh yeah, it's like there were a fuck ton of people coming in and out of this house. Like, right away, like, neighbours are coming in, and they're, like, tidying up and getting stuff ready and, like, cleaning. There are neighbours coming in to help clean up the blood, which nowadays is like, but back then, it's not as if they had, like, the forensics to deal with it anyway. Mr. and Mrs. Borden, their, autopsied corpses are in the house, on the dining room table, and Emma and Lizzie stay in the house. Like, they sleep there. I think Lizzie's friend comes and stays with them as well. Her friend Alice comes over. But, like, what the actual fuck? Oh yeah, I'm just gonna have a nap here next to the mutilated corpses of my father and stepmother. What? Is that not ringing any alarm bells for anybody? I not seem fucking weird? No? Anyway, back to the investigation. So the police officers, they're going around the house and they're looking for stuff. And Lizzie, like, points out, like, a hatchet in the barn. And there's, like, this little hatchet and it's covered in ash. Like, it's dirty. And the handle is broken. And the police are like, yep, this seems like the murder weapon. Like, they think that it was used, it was cleaned, and then it was, like, put in ash to dry it or cover up blood or something. So Alice Russell, she comes and stays with the two sisters in the house. And John Morse, he's staying there too. He's still there. He decides not to stay in the guest room, which is, valid. But he doesn't, like, go to any of the other rooms either. Like, he could have had the master bedroom. Like, apparently he was sleeping in the guest room in the attic, but, like, I couldn't see a guest room in the attic. I thought it was just the maid's room, but, apparently he was up there. So the next day, everybody's, like, going in and out of the house. Like, there's police, there's neighbours, so on and so forth. It's like the police are searching the house, and they found this. They call it a slop pail, and it's basically this bucket with bloody rags in it, right? And they're like, Lizzie, what is this? And she has to explain to these old, stuffy, fucking Victorian men that they're her menstruation rags. So yeah, they find the hatchet, so they do, like, this big thing, and, like, everyone and their granny has been in and out of this house. So they find the hatchet. Later on that day, the mayor of Fall River visits Lizzie and is like, hey, just so you know, you're the main suspect, which I'm sure was super fun. The next day, Alice sees Lizzie burn this blue corduroy dress, and she's like, that's weird. That's suspicious. Nobody knows if Lizzie was wearing that kind of dress that day. So anyway, there's this inquest, and she is on all of the drugs. And so they have this inquest, and she's questioned, and she's on all this morphine. And everything she says basically contradicts with itself. And she didn't answer questions properly, even if answering them would have been better for her. She was like, everything from, like, when her father returned home, like, what were you doing? I was reading a magazine. Wait, no, I was ironing. Or, no, I wasn't ironing. I was actually coming down the stairs. Like, like, she said that she helped her father take off his boots and put his slippers on so he could nap. But, like, he still had his boots on when he was sleeping. So basically, after this inquest, Lizzie is arrested and is sent to this prison 8 miles north, because there's no ladies' prison in Falls River. There isn't one. So she gets sent up to this other prison. And, like, she is found guilty of 3 counts of murder. 1, the murder of Andrew Jackson Borden. 2, Abby Borden. And 3, Abby and Andrew together. Like, they I don't know why, but, like, that's a thing. So yeah, she ends up in this jail in Taunton because there's no women's prison in Fall River, so she's up there. So Lizzie's arrest, it basically ignites this whole fucking moment, like a national moment. So, like, women's groups, like, all over the country, they start rallying for Lizzie, because they're like, this is a good Christian woman, she's of high society. Like, even the Falls River, like, people from the Hill, they're like, you can't do this to our girl, she's one of us, she wouldn't do that. The suffrage movement got behind her as well, because they argued that she didn't have a jury of her peers, because obviously the entire jury is men. So if there were no women in the jury, she definitely couldn't have a jury of her peers. So in 1893, because of just all of this noise that's being made, there's a new trial, you know? Because you've got all of these sort of women's movement and women's leagues kind of involved, but you still also have the idea that a respectable woman would not be capable of doing something so egregious and aggressive and vile, you know? There's another trial. Emma, who, because Lizzie has been jailed, because she's been tried for murder, Emma is the sole beneficiary to, like, the Borden fortune, or Andrew's fortune, because Lizzie's been jailed. And she uses this money to get the best fucking lawyer money can buy. He is like the Billy Flynn of lawyers. Give him the old razzle-dazzle, razzle-dazzle him. And he decides to have Lizzie appear in court. Very demure. It is... At this point, it's like high art, you know? He has her in very expensive, very beautiful black clothing, 'cause she's in mourning. He has her show up with, like, mourning flowers. Also, during this time period, flowers are really important. Like, it's very much a thing. So she's got her mourning flowers. You know, there's a point during the trial where they show, like, the skulls of Andrew and Abby. And when they are, he, like, dramatically chucks them up on a table and opens it up. Lizzie, she promptly faints. And this is, like, a massive, like, spectacle. Because the reason the skulls are there is they were checking the size of the hatchet to the size of the wounds. So there was a reason for the skulls to be there, but it all leaned into this whole, like, drama of the trial. So at this trial as well, Lizzie does not, like, testify. Not at all. Not in her defence, none of that. And the judge rules that her initial testimony from her initial, inquest is not admissible. Another thing they don't allow is a local pharmacist had, come forward and said, I didn't think it was, odd at the time, but then afterwards I thought, bit weird, that Lizzie had tried to buy prussic acid, which is, very poisonous, and you need a prescription for that. And, her reason for buying it was, I need it to clean this sealskin cape. I do it all the time, even though, that's not what it's used for. But, that's deemed as inadmissible because they weren't poisoned, so there was no reason to have any mention of poison. And they bring up, Alice Russell noticing, the dress being burned, and Emma and the dressmaker, state, that was just a thing they did. They both, attest to this, oh yeah, we just burn dresses when they're no good, because there was paint on it, so we had to do that. And so, all these other suspects are, brought forward and stuff, including, Uncle John. What's weird about this trial as well is they don't try and, blame anybody else. There was an underlying tone of maybe an immigrant came in and killed them, because there was another, hatchet job, I think a few days before the trial had happened, and because it was a Portuguese immigrant who, committed the crime, and the crimes were eerily similar to the Borden murders, that it was, brought up again, even though this person wasn't even in Fall River at the time of the Borden murders. But anyway, Lizzie's defence, they don't try and provide any other suspects.
Being a part of a royal family might seem enticing, but more often than not, it comes at the expense of everything else, like your freedom, your privacy, and sometimes even your head. Wondery's new podcast, Even the Royals, pulls back the curtain on royal families, past and present, from all over the world, to show you the darker side of what it means to be royalty. From icons like Grace Kelly, Oscar-winning actress turned Princess of Monaco, who the world saw as the ultimate good girl. She mastered playing a happy wife and mother, but beneath it all, she was desperately lonely. Grace spent her whole life working towards perfection, and it ultimately cost her her happiness. Or King Ludwig II from Bavaria. He was only 18 when his father died, leaving the crown to him and a duty to rule that he never wanted. He refused to lead, and used the funds from the royal treasury to further his extreme love of opera. But this choice eventually cost him the crown and his life. Follow Even the Royals on the Wondery app, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can binge Even the Royals ad-free right now on Wondery Plus.
Emma was away at her friends. Uncle John Morse, he had the weirdest but very airtight alibi. Because he went to visit relatives, the relatives were well, he was here. But he was able to remember the streetcar number he was on because of the number on the streetcar driver's hat. And the reason he remembers this particular streetcar is because there were 5 priests on it. I don't know how difficult it is to ensure something so peculiar happens. And the streetcar driver remembers the priest, but he doesn't remember John. A wee shame. It's a wee shame for John. But anyway, this is a massive, massive thing. And it's a huge, just fucking sensationalist drama. And Lizzie is painted as very much the demure lady, high society lady who would never hurt. She's incapable of murdering. On the 20th of June 1893, trial is over and the jury have to go deliberate. The judge sort of ends the session, the trial, with he does this big speech, and he basically tells the jury, I'm not telling you to say she's not guilty, but So he didn't exactly tell them to, say not guilty, but he told them to say not guilty. So anyway, they go off, the jury, they chat for an hour and a half and come back. And I think most of that is just paperwork. They just go in, smoked some pipes while they waited, just to make it seem like they took more effort than they did. Come back out and they're there's not guilty. The courtroom erupts into applause and cheers, and Lizzie's I'm the happiest woman in the world. And after this, so Lizzie and Emma, they return to Fall River, and all of the support that she had from the high society folks, once she's back home, that support kind of just trickles away. So Emma and Lizzie, they move into this massive, gorgeous new house in Fall River, up on the hill, and Lizzie names it Maplecroft, which, like, most people didn't name their houses back then, but she was like, fuck it, fuck this for Game of Soldiers, I'm naming my house. They have everything. They've got maids, housekeepers, coachmen, the whole shebang. And when Lizzie moves in, she changes her name from Lizzie Andrew Borden to Lisbeth A. Borden. I mean, it's not a massive change, but you do you. The Borden sisters, they're just like living their best lives, and Lizzie more so than Emma. So while Emma was just happy to just kind of chill out and exist, Lizzie was out hanging out with like actors and shit who were not seen as, like, nowadays, like, actors are like a big deal. They're, you know, they're the stars. Back then, they were sort of very low class. They performed for you. They served you. It was kind of seedy to hang out with actors, people of the stage. And so, like, Emma does not like these actor people. And Lizzie ends up having this party in 1905 for this actress Nance O'Neill, who was very much latched on to Lizzie, or Lizzie latched on to her, him to say. And after this party, Emma is like, I'm done, I'm off. And she just leaves. She moves out, and the two sisters never see each other again. Now, as Lizzie, she stays in Fall River, and she becomes this kind of urban legend. Like, children sing rhymes about her, she's like openly mocked, and like when she goes to church, when she goes to her normal seat in church, no one else sits around her. It's like when you put a magnet down and it repels all the other stuff, like that's what she's like. It's like, no one's around her. By 1927, Lizzie is ill as fuck, and she ends up getting her gallbladder removed. Any surgery someone had to have pre-1960 is always going to end poorly. I don't care who you are, there's always a bad side effect to it. So after getting her gallbladder removed, she's really fucking sick, and she ends up dying of pneumonia on June 1st, 1927. And what's weird is, like, 9 days later, Emma Borden passes away from chronic nephritis in a nursing home in New Hampshire. And both sisters were buried side by side in the family plot in the Oak Grove Cemetery in Fall River. So, like, in her will, Lizzie Borden was worth like $250,000, which is worth over $5 million today. And because she owned like properties and had shares in utilities and stuff like that, because she owned like properties, like from rentals to like commercial places, and had shares in utilities, had loads of jewellery, like, because she had all that, she was really well off. And she ends up leaving, like, in today's money, like 600 grand to an animal rescue league, and then like another 10 grand to like ensure that her father's grave is like maintained. And like her closest friend and relative ends up with 125 grand, and then like the rest of her relatives kind of end up with somewhere between 20 to 100 grand. Like, it's all just spread out to everybody, like, just take the money. So like over the years, a bunch of theories have come out as to like why Lizzie did it. I'm convinced Lizzie did it. Like, the timeline makes sense, but like the question is why? Like, was she greedy? Did she just want money? Or was there like something like darker afoot? Here's the thing, with any sort of scandal, any sort of massive event that happens in a close-knit town like this, especially when it becomes national news, there is always going to be a why. Why did she do this? Why did someone do this? Why were these two elderly people hacked to death with a wee axe? It's a natural question. We always want to know why somebody did a thing or why a thing happened. We always want to look for reasons and justifications, but sometimes there isn't one. So there are theories of why Lizzie did it. And it goes from one end of the spectrum to the other. Plus, we are kind of hung up on motive as, a general rule of thumb. But, like, I firmly believe that Lizzie did it, but that Emma is the mastermind behind it. Because Lizzie was always trying. She was trying to be social. She was trying to have friends. She was trying to go on adventures. Like, she was constantly reaching out for something, But nothing was really coming back for her. And the only constant, the only love and affection she really got in her life was from her big sister, who was effectively a surrogate parent for her. And as far as we know, Emma didn't really look for anything else until Lizzie actually found a group of friends that weren't within the right social class, but she found people to connect with, to spend time with. And she had parties, whether it was because she wanted to have parties or because she was so desperate to be cared for and to be wanted. We don't know. Whom's to say? But, which I think is one of the more reasonable theories, you know, after years and years of just constantly being an afterthought for not being given the life that they felt they deserved, the sisters ensured they got the lives they deserved, or that they believe they deserved. Also, from here on in, the theories are going to get just a wee bit wackier. Of course, there's the rumour that Emma and or Lizzie had a suitor whom their father deemed less than worthy of his daughter's hand, and as such, the only way for them to be together was to get rid of him. That also plays into the idea of why Emma didn't return, because she was with her lover and not her family. Because she was with her lover at the time of the murders. Interesting. And it only gets more salacious from here, because the rumour mill keeps churning, and at one point, Lizzie is whatever the female equivalent of balls deep is, in a sea of men. Like, Lizzie was out there shagging this fella, fucking that fella, blowing the other dude. Like, she was getting her goods. The woman was swimming in a sea of penises. Like, alright. Which brings us, of course, to the uncle theory. The bones of it is, Lizzie is embroiled in an incestuous affair with her uncle, and as such, they plot the demise of the elderly Bordens together so that they can get them out of the way and seize their fortune. Uncle John manipulated Lizzie into murdering both her father and her stepmother. And it was his idea to make sure that Abby got killed first to ensure that the Borden daughters would receive the full inheritance and not Abby's family. Which branches off into the uncle with a suspiciously specific and airtight alibi. Lots of people find it weird that he happened to remember the number on the hat of the streetcar driver who happened to be carrying 5 priests. But like, for all we know, the dude could have been like super into streetcars, I'm just saying. Or he could have been on the spectrum and one of his things was remembering numbers and stuff. Who's to say? So he has this oddly ironclad alibi, but instead of being with family, which he said, he was in fact murdering the Borden for like money. Like, there's all these theories that Lizzie and Bridget were in on it together. Lizzie was secretly a lesbian, and she was caught by Abby doing the horizontal tango with the maid. And the way this little theory goes is that Bridget was not, in fact, going outside washing windows, but instead she was canoodling. Abby walked in on this scene with Lizzie and Bridget together, canoodling, snuggling, stooping, knocking boots, so on and so forth. And the discovery of such a scandalous scene, well, and it's the reason that Lizzie and or Bridget grabbed a hatchet and attacked Abby. And there's like another theory that says that, you know, she was out banging her way through Fall River and she just wanted her freedom at that point, driven by the power of lust and stuff. She wanted the money, and so she killed everybody. And then you have the incest theory, that Andrew Borden abused his girls, especially Lizzie, and, you know, this was her retaliation. Abuse comes in many forms. Now, whether he was physically assaulting them, or whether this was just sort of a continued emotional destruction, or perhaps even financial abuse, which still, even right now, isn't understood to a great extent. Like, I think there definitely feels like there's something there. I'm not discounting greed by any means, but it definitely feels like there's something more sinister underlying. Of course, mental illness has to have a seat at the table, and it's been argued that maybe Lizzie was in some sort of fugue state, and she went and just killed them but didn't realise she was doing it, or like she was perhaps schizophrenic and she had an episode. But it's weird that it wouldn't happen before or after. Like there was no, like to our knowledge, she never attacked or assaulted anyone before or after the incident. Now that we've covered that, of course, some people thought it was demons. Demons? Demons. Possession, the occult, spooky spirits, wiggly woos. Lizzie was possessed by an evil spirit, or even a demon, who forced her to slaughter her family against her will. But not the maid, because the spirits are part of the proletariat. They're like super happy to kill off the wealthy people, but not the maid. She's a working class, we gotta leave her alone. Even demons have rules sometimes. Last but not least, pure, unadulterated greed. Lizzie wanted the finer things in life. She wanted to live the high life that she should have. She should have been born with a silver spoon in her mouth, but her father always kept it just out of arm's reach. She was sick of waiting. She wanted her money, and she wanted it now. However, there's always the possibility that Lizzie is but a red herring, and the real murder was committed by someone else. Either Uncle John, Emma, or a quote-unquote suspicious-looking man hanging outside the Borden house. It's almost as if they lived at the bottom of the hill in a neighbourhood full of immigrant workers, near textile factories and places of work and other areas of commerce, and that people, as a general rule, tend to be around. Either way, I am absolutely convinced that Lizzie Borden did commit those murders. Whether she had an accomplice, or whether she was pushed into it one way or the other, or if it was her own idea, we don't know. We don't. And so, in a sea of ambiguity, thus ends the story of Lizzie Borden. So, what did we learn today? We learned that if you are rich enough, you can get away with murder. I mean, we already knew that, basically. We learned that sisters are in fact doing it for themselves, and that quite probably Andrew Jackson Borden had it coming. He had it coming. He only had himself to blame. And if you liked today's episode, feel free to rate and review 5 stars on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. I love your reviews so much. I read every single one of them. Like, every single one. So I actually have started the website. So I think I might just screenshot and put up my favourites. I haven't decided yet. I'm so tempted to take my favourites and post them on the website. Because here's the thing. You are fucking fantastic. All of you. You're amazing. And I am so happy that you keep coming back, listening week after week, or after a almost 3-week hiatus because of my health issues. But really, it means a lot. But I'm really happy that you are still here. Or if you're new, welcome! Hi! Now, of course, if you want to get more of this history stuff, you can follow me on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. Who Did What Now Pod on everything, apart from Twitter, where I'm Who Did What Now PD, because there weren't enough characters. Oh goodness, recommendation time. Watching, I am going to recommend that you watch Obi-Wan Kenobi, because it's so good. Also, I'm a big Star Wars fan, and it gives me an excuse to go, hello there. That's fucking Obi-Wan Kenobi. I love it. Oh no, I actually started reading The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, and it is just, go read it, go read it, go read it, go read it. And listening. I actually listened to this podcast, and I found it very interesting. I was listening to American Hostage with John Hamm. It's sort of a radio series, a podcast series, a radio play type thing. It's so good. It's so good. I really, really enjoyed that one. I really enjoyed it because it's historical, but it's also a wee dramatization. I was listening to it as I looked at the whole world. I was putting this basically world map decal on my kid's bedroom wall, and I like to listen to stuff when I'm doing physical things. It just makes me feel better. or it makes me work better, either way. So I was doing that. So those are your recommendations this week. And with that, I shall bid you adieu. Adios, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen, my friends. Bye-bye.